I've been sitting on this review for way too long. Silent Hill 2 Remake came out over a year ago, and honestly, I kept putting it off covering it because I wanted to make sure I had the right words. This isn't another remake, this is Silent Hill 2 we're talking about, a game that pretty much defined what psychological horror could be in a video game. And here's the thing, when Konami first announced that they were handing this project over to Bloober Team, a studio known for games like The Medium and The Layers of Fear, the internet lost its collective mind. I was right there with everyone else, wondering what the hell Konami was thinking. Bloober Team's games were always technically decent, sure, but they never had the special something that made Silent Hill 2 legendary back in 2001. Fast forward to now in 2026, and I spent the last couple of months jumping back into this remake, and I gotta say, this might be one of my new favorite games in the survival horror genre. Konami even announced Silent Hill F as a follow-up recently, which got me into the survival horror games, and I thought that was great as well. So that's kind of what led me to Silent Hill 2. And so yeah, this review is a little late, but some games are worth talking about no matter how much time has passed. So let me get this out of the way right up front. Silent Hill 2 Remake is exceptional. It's freaking phenomenal. It's up there with Resident Evil 2 and Dead Space remakes in terms of quality, and in some ways it might even surpass them. I know that's a bold statement. Here's the thing, stick with me here. This isn't a perfect game, we'll get into some issues, but what Bloober Team managed to pull off here is something I generally didn't think they had in them. They took one of the most beloved horror games ever and modernized it without gutting what made it special in the first place. That's incredibly hard to do. For those who don't know, Silent Hill 2 follows James Sunderland, a man who receives a letter from his dead wife Mary asking him to meet her in their special place known as Silent Hill. Except Mary has been dead from an illness that she died 3 years ago from. Driven by grief, confusion, and maybe a little bit of desperation, James heads to Silent Hill in what follows one of the most emotionally devastating stories in gaming history. But we'll circle back to the narrative stuff a little later. Let's talk about how this thing actually plays. The biggest change here is immediately obvious. It's the camera. The original Silent Hill 2 uses fixed camera angles, which was the standard back in survival horror games in 2001. The remake switches over the shoulder perspective, similar to what we've seen in modern Resident Evil games. Now, I love the fixed cameras back in the original. They created this really deliberate cinematic moments that highlighted the isolation and the dread. But after playing through the remake now, I think the new camera system was definitely the right call. It completely changes how you experience the environment.
I am here for you, James. See?
Silent Hill 2 Remake encourages exploration in a way the original just didn't. You can actually look around corners, examine objects up close from different angles, and appreciate the disgusting level of detail Bloober Team cramped into every location. I'm talking about bloodstained wallpapers, decaying furniture, graffiti that tells its own disturbing stories, stuff that you would have missed with fixed camera angles. The fog is still thick and oppressive, limiting your visibility, but now that you're actively moving through it, rather than just watching James, it's a subtle but significant difference. The level of design itself stays true to the original blueprint, but nearly every location has been expanded. Apartments have more room to explore, the hospital feels twice as big and somehow even more unsettling. These aren't just padding for the sake of length either, they expanded areas and actually enhances the experience. You'll find more items, more environmental storytelling, and more reasons to feel completely lost in this nightmare. James can even break through certain glass planes or boarded up sections to discover hidden areas with extra supplies like health drinks, syringes, and ammunition. It's not revolutionary, but it keeps you engaged and constantly wondering what's around the corner next. Now let's talk about combat, because this is where it gets interesting. The original Silent Hill 2 had combat that was, let's be honest, pretty rough back for 2001. It was clunky and awkward, which some people argued added to the horror because James isn't a trained soldier, he's just a regular guy. Fair point, but it aged terribly. The remake completely overhauls the combat while keeping James feeling vulnerable and human. The most noticeable addition is the dodge mechanic. James can now sidestep attacks, which adds layers of strategy to encounters. Melee combat feels genuinely satisfying now. When you swing with that wooden plank or steel pipe into one of those grotesque monsters, there's real weight and impact behind it. Stomping on a down enemy has this visual crunch that makes you feel every hit. The monsters themselves are brilliantly designed, and some of them can actually camouflage themselves in the environment, blending into the walls or hiding in the shadows until you get close. It's effective and unsettling.
Want you dead? And a corpse can't laugh!
Eddie.
The gun combat though, it was serviceable but a little underwhelming. Shooting feels functional, the guns do their job, but nothing more. There's not much feedback or impact when you fire. Compared to how satisfying the melee combat is, the gunplay feels like a missed opportunity. It's not bad enough to ruin the experience, but it's noticeably weaker. You'll still use guns for certain situations, especially if you're low on health and need to keep the distance, but I found myself leaning heavily on melee throughout most of my playthrough. Boss fights deserve special mention here as well. Without spoiling anything specific, Bloober Team completely redesigned them. The original boss encounters were pretty straightforward. You basically just run around the area and shoot until the thing died. The remake adds actual mechanics and strategy to these fights. You need to pay attention to patterns, use environment, and adapt your approach. They're still not Dark Souls level complex or anything, but they're a massive improvement and generally intense. One thing surprised me is how much longer this remake is compared to the original. A standard playthrough of the 2001 version took about 8 to 10 hours. The remake, you're looking at about 18 to 20 hours, maybe even more if you're thorough. Some people might worry about pacing with an extended runtime, but honestly, the game never dragged. The pacing stays tight throughout. There's always something new to discover, a new puzzle to solve, a new area opening up that pushes you forward. Speaking of puzzles, they're still here and they're still challenging. Silent Hill 2 isn't an action game pretending to be horror. This is a methodical, slow burn experience that demands patience. You'll spend time reading notes, expanding your environment, and piecing together solutions. Some puzzles are incredibly obtuse, especially on higher difficulties, and yes, I had to look up a couple of solutions online because I was completely stuck. That's what YouTube's for, baby. But the part that charmed me, modern games tend to hold your hand way too much, and Silent Hill 2 Remake respects your intelligence even if it occasionally frustrates you. The exploration loop is really what makes the game works. You're constantly moving through fog-covered streets, catastrophic interiors, and the other world, this nightmarish alternate dimension that represents the psychological torments of the characters. The other world sections are where the game goes full nightmare fuel, with environments that defy logic and imagery that is deeply disturbing. Bloober Team nailed the atmosphere here. It's oppressive, uncomfortable, and you generally want to get out as quickly as possible. Now let's talk about the narrative, because this is where Silent Hill 2 always stood apart from other horror games. On the surface, it's about a man looking for his dead wife in a haunted town, but it's really about guilt, grief, abuse, and the ways trauma shapes us. James meets several other people in Silent Hill, and each of them is dealing with their own demons, literally and figuratively. There's Angela Orozco, a young woman with a painful history of abuse. Her scenes are some of the most emotionally brutal in the game and in gaming history, period. Then there's Eddie Bombrowski, a guy who's been bullied his entire life and is clearly on the edge of something truly dark. And finally, there's Maria, a woman who looks exactly like Mary but acts completely different. She's more outgoing and confident, and her presence raises a lot of uncomfortable questions about James and his motivation.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. I was just...
Hey, it's okay. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm kind of lost.
Lost?
The voice acting is truly remarkable across the board. Salem Gunnarsdottir is Angela delivers a performance that's absolutely heartbreaking. You can hear the pain and confusion in every line. Luke Roberts as James captures the specific quality of a man who's barely holding it together, trying to stay focused while everything around him is crumbling. And Salem Gunnarsdottir pulling double duty as both Maria and Mary, two characters who are similar but fundamentally different, is just masterful work. The cutscenes benefit massively from the modern technology. The facial animations are incredibly detailed, capturing subtle expressions that add so much emotional weight to every scene. There were moments in my playthrough where I was genuinely moved, and that's rare in games for me. Silent Hill 2 was always a bold story, dealing with themes most games won't even touch, and the remake honors that completely. Bloober Team didn't sanitize anything or try to monetize the narrative in ways that would have diluted its impact. If you played the original, you'll find the story beats basically identical, which is exactly what we needed for this. For newcomers like myself, you're coming into something very special and deeply uncomfortable in the best ways possible. We need to talk about Akira Yamaoka's soundtrack because it's still one of the most important elements of Silent Hill 2. The music in this game is haunting, depressing, and absolutely perfect for the tone. The remake includes the remastered versions of the original soundtrack and a few new compositions. I'm a little old school, I still prefer the original soundtrack, but the remake versions are excellent in their own right. They add a subtle layer and modern production techniques without losing the soul of the original. You can switch between the old and new tracks in the options, which is a nice trust for the purists. Visually, the game is stunning. Silent Hill 2 Remake is generally one of the best looking games I've played in the last couple years. The fog isn't just a technical limitation like it was in 2001. It's a fully realized atmospheric element that shifts and moves naturally. The lighting is moody and oppressive. The environmental detail is borderline obsessive. The buildings look truly unsafe. The other world is a rust-covered, blood-soaked hellscape that looks disturbingly organic. This is a truly current-gen showcase. That being said, the performance on PS5 isn't perfect. I play primarily in quality mode, which targets 30 frames per second, with enhanced visual fidelity. For the most part, it did hold steady, but I did experience some occasional frame drops, especially in more complex areas during certain boss fights. They were rare enough not to ruin the experience, but noticeable enough to mention. Performance mode does exist if you want a smoother 60 FPS experience, but you'll sacrifice some visual detail. Your call on what matters more to you. One minor annoyance was the transitions from cutscenes to gameplay aren't seamless. There are noticeable pause and loading moments between them, which breaks the immersion slightly. It's not a deal breaker, but somehow considering so much effort was put into making everything else so cohesive, it's a strange oversight for me. Other modern games handle this more smoothly, and I'm surprised Bloober Team didn't nail this particular detail.
Daddy!
So where does this leave us? Silent Hill 2 Remake is without exaggeration one of the best survival horror games remakes ever made. I went into this game a few months ago with low expectations, and it's become one of my favorite games in the genre. The fact that Bloober Team, a studio that I was actively worried about, pulled off this honestly incredible game. They respected the source material while modernizing it in a smart, meaningful way. The combat is better, the exploration is more engaging, and the performances are outstanding, and the story just hits so hard as it did in 2001. Are there flaws? A little. Gunplay is a little overwhelming, performance could be more stable, transitions between cutscene and gameplay is a little clunky, but those are very minor issues in the grand scheme of what the game achieves. Silent Hill 2 was a triumph for survival horror games 23 years ago. This remake is a triumph all over again. If you've been remotely interested in horror games, you need to play this. And with Silent Hill F already out and thriving, I'm generally excited for this franchise in the next couple of years. Silent Hill is back and it's good to be terrified again. But alright guys, that's my take on Silent Hill 2 Remake. What did you think? Did you play it when it came out, or are you waiting for a sale? Let me know in the comments. I'm generally curious of what your experience was like. And hey, if you want to catch me playing horror games or just hanging out, I'm usually streaming over on Twitch. Link is in the description, same username. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Maybe avoid some fog covered towns. Stay safe, stay smart, and stay alpha.